I had one the other night. I went into a restaurant, and this woman stood up. I looked at her immediately. She had money. She wasn't. They get paid for it. They're professional from Soros and other people. And we're going to look into Soros because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people. Because this is more than like protests. This is real agitation. This is riots on the street. And we're going to look into that.
So we bring you today yet another example of the Democrat Party's recent condemnation of political violence to be insincere, or at the very least only a halfway measure. Because here's what I've been saying. You can condemn the action of violence, but if you don't condemn the very people committing the violence, then what overall is the point? And the truth is that the Democrat Party for many years now has sponsored and coddled and oftentimes openly celebrated a very radical base of activists who very often are mentally deranged, as you so often see, who are going out and acting essentially as this paramilitary force, whether that's to show up and do organized, oftentimes professional paid protesting, or to intimidate conservatives, or even sometimes, as you see in Portland, Oregon, or recently in Utah with Charlie Kirk, commit actual acts of violence. And the Democrat Party essentially stands there and denies that this type of stuff even exists, much less claim that they actually have a connection to the radical left revolutionaries in our own country. So that's why recently Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance and other members of the Trump administration have announced they want to fulfill one of Charlie Kirk's main life passions, which was to see the shutting down of these far-left organizations that essentially form something nowadays of a domestic terror network, on top of the fact they're receiving a lot of shady money and financing, of course, from George Soros and other top left-wing or Democrat donors. Now, here's the thing. Democrats right now are throwing a massive freakout about this. They're saying this is an affront to democracy. This is authoritarianism. They're coming after this. They're using political violence as a justification for all this stuff. But I stand there and say, hold on, wait a minute, Democrats. I thought these people weren't associated with you. That's what you keep on telling me. Antifa, what does that have to do with Democrats? Antifa doesn't even exist. It's not even real, right? Left-wing revolutionaryism. Don't you know Hakeem Jeffries told me we're not a socialist party, so how could we even be affiliated? Well, again, what Democrats are doing in this process is exposing the fact these people are much closer to their party as a political organization than they make it out to be. And I want you to think about the reverse of that, right? Imagine if the far right, say the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, were this close to the Republican Party as the extremists of the left, the communists, the socialists, the anarchists, the radicals, the looters were to the Democrat Party. You'd never hear the end of it. But the truth is, you have a political organization in this country called the DNC that essentially has like its own version of the SA, the SS, whatever you want to say. And I want to talk all about that here today. So guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Help us continue to bring you this coverage and help support our work by doing so. Appreciate it very much. And with that said, I first of all want to start this video with the context for those of you who are wondering what we're talking about here. Well, just yesterday when J.D. Vance was guest hosting the Charlie Kirk show, he and Stephen Miller announced a plan that they want to, quote, use every resource we have at DOJ, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks of organized left-wing agitation, violence, and often terror. Take a listen to Miller's statements, and then we're going to show you today how prominent Democrats are reacting. Again, I thought they had nothing to do with these people, right? Okay, take a listen.
Walk me through, at a high level, like what you and I have been working on, what the whole administration has been working on to try to make sure that we don't reward and promote this craziness.
Yes, so it's an excellent question. I said this before, and but it bears repeating. The last message that Charlie sent me was, I think it was just the day before we lost him, which is that we need to have an organized strategy to go after the left-wing organizations that are promoting violence in this country. And I will write those words onto my heart and I will carry them out. If people ask me, what emotions I'm feeling right now, this is something people say, you kind of know the answer. There's incredible sadness, but there's incredible anger. And the thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion.
Right.
But focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause is one of the most important agents of change in human history.
Charlie showed that. Amen.
And we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
We've got 30 seconds, so be quick, Stephen.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence, it is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Amen to that. And let me, I guess, further explain for you here what Stephen Miller is talking about. Needless to say, the supposed grassroots nature of leftism and protesting in America, at least in the modern day, is far from anything grassroots. Whether it's Antifa, or Young Democratic Socialists, or the American Communist Party, or these recent trans and queer militias, all sorts of revolutionary movements. But you also think about things like the NGOs that you've seen, for instance, sponsor the migration crisis. Remember those so-called Catholic charities? It's a huge network here, and a lot of that money is coming from powerful places. George Soros and the Open Society Foundation are known as the most infamous example. They're not the only one, but essentially what the Trump administration is looking to do now, after you've seen repeated cases of far-left violence, is start looking at, hey, very closely, where are you getting this money from? Who is being propped up in your organization? What is the relationship between the people in your organization and violence, et cetera, et cetera? In some cases, like for instance, Antifa, would it be appropriate to designate your organization a terrorist organization? These are all questions we are looking into, or even if not terrorism, at the very least criminal organizations, right? So that is essentially what's going on here. And again, this all comes because we've seen so many cases of organized radical left violence. And yes, in some instances, right, as Stephen Miller points out, Charlie Kirk throughout his life was very passionate about this, and whether or not Tyler Robinson was directly a part of an organized leftist movement or not, again, another example of how directly and indirectly these people radicalize one another. That's why you have to go in, you have to break it up, right? It's no different, frankly, than thinking about, hey, Islamic terror networks loosely operating in the country, even back to the 1950s, right? Organizations looking to do Soviet infiltration on behalf of the communists, right? We're in that same kind of moment right now in history, and that's essentially what Stephen Miller is saying. And notice what we did not mention in this entire thing: the Democrat Party, right? Because as I was told, hey, this radicals, we don't have anything to do with that. Tyler Robinson, for instance, is one of these radicals. It's notable that, according to current records, he never voted for Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anyone in the 2020 election. He did not register as a Democrat. He registered as unaffiliated. That does not surprise me whatsoever, because I never said he was a Democrat. I said he was a radical leftist. There is a difference. The thing, though, is this, right? The radical rightists, who often operate outside the political system, you don't see the Republican Party sucking up and coddling these people. The radical leftists, however, are being used essentially and weaponized by the Democrats, and the same type of money and powerful people who are funding the Democrat Party are also funding these radical leftists to do their dirty work. And again, that's what this is all about. Don't believe me? Well, take a listen to some of the recent reactions, of course, from Democrat politicians, namely Gavin Newsom, who's saying in response to Trump talking about, again, shutting down the radical left, which I thought you guys were against. He's saying this is code red. We need to wake up. This is an assault on our democracy. So take a listen.
This is code red. We all need to wake up to what's going on. And maybe, in final words, maybe I'm saying that from the prism of being a governor of a state where I watched the military asserting themselves to try to take over for domestic policing, where I watched this private army that is the most funded private army of its type anywhere in the world, with ICE out there in masks, intimidating people and their free expression of speech. Maybe it's because I'm sitting here where the UC Regents are meeting tomorrow to discuss a $1.9 billion extortion fine because institutions of higher learning and independent thinking are under assault by Donald Trump. That happens to be UCLA in my state. Maybe it's through the prism of that, but I assure you, in every state in America, I assure you this is a preview of things to come.
And that, by the way, sums up basically his rhetoric on the entire podcast here. Everything is code red. It's an authoritarian takeover, blah, 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 all of this stuff. But again, Gavin, what exactly is Trump doing here? See, these Democrats think they're smart, right? They will, first of all, use the radical left, often celebrate many of these professional agitators and activists when they do things like help to organize the No Kings and anti-Trump protests, and they'll say, look, the American people are rising up. Or whether it's that or they show up to the congressional town halls to scream about Doge, same exact story, right? But they also understand they're dealing here with these like deranged, crazy, radical, mentally ill freaks. So at the same time, whenever they commit violence, you can still turn around and say, oh, we condemn violence. We never called for that. Because there's a plausible deniability. See, there's a distance between the radical left and the Democrats, but not enough for them to not act in unison, just enough to like play off and deny one another and involve in one another when it's happening. But that's why I'm saying, right? I see through exactly what is going on here. Hence why Gavin Newsom is, of course, panicking so much. Mr. Nice Guy Moderate, he's been trying to claim to be as of late, because Donald Trump is looking to take moves to shut down the radical left. Jasmine Crockett, another very high IQ individual, of course, said very similar things in response to this. In fact, I would argue her response regarding left-wing violence and radicalism was completely incoherent here, but take a listen as well to what she had to say in response to recent events.
Do you think the political violence problem on the right is worse than what it is on the left?
I think it's a false comparison in the first place. And I think we should have a leader that is responsible enough to denounce political violence, period. It's not about where it comes from. It's about the fact that it is happening. It is never okay. It is never okay.
Okay, pause right there already. See, okay, if you listened to the start of my video and thought, you know, Vince, I think you're being a little bit out there. You sound a little conspiratorial with this. Like, what are you talking about? Organized radical leftism, all this stuff. It being connected to the Democrat Party, funded. They're kind of working in unison, but not directly, right? Listen to her answer. It is a false comparison. Then she further says, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Why are you so defensive where it comes from? I thought it doesn't come from you again. It's almost like, Jasmine, you are having a relationship with those types of people. Let's keep listening, though.
If it happens on the left, it is never okay. If it happens on the right, and if we had someone that knew how to be an adult in the room, he would say that. But when we look at it, please tell me who is fostering this gun culture, right? I mean, the reality is that the average person on the left probably couldn't make a shot from 200 yards because they haven't been playing with assault rifles since they were a little kid. Like, that is just a reality of how people on the left typically work. And if we...
Also not true. This is a fifth grade understanding of politics. It is true the mainstream Democrat Party, the neoliberals you could call them, are very anti-gun. The far left is not anti-gun, okay? There's plenty of radical socialist and communist revolutionary movements, ANTIFA, trans militias, queer militias. These things all exist in America. And, you know, I really question, how does Jasmine Crockett think that the communist and leftist revolutions of history were fought? Do they think they fought them with COVID masks and, like, you know, wearing BDSM stuff at pride parades? That's how they overthrew the Tsar? That's how they overthrew the Chinese nationalists or something? No, that's not how it works, okay? Leftists historically have fought with guns. Even look at the 1960s, okay? Look at either Black Panthers or many of the different, you know, radical leftist movements. But here's the thing. Where am I going with this all once again? It's actually another example of exactly what I'm describing. Because the Democrats don't directly claim the radical left, they can sit there and pretend like, oh, that surely would not have been a Democrat because Democrats are against guns. But the radical left who you enable and coddle and work alongside with is pro-gun. So you see what I'm saying, right? This is the game they play where they try to pretend like they're not associated, but they clearly are. Let's keep listening, though.
Believe that political violence is a problem in this country, if we believe that our children on campuses, just because they want to go out and have a day of free speech on campus, may be subjected to this kind of violence, then maybe we need to start talking about legislation that will keep these types of weapons out of certain people's hands. Now, whether or not this gentleman would have qualified under any type of laws that many of the Democrats have proposed, I don't know. But the reality is that they typically want to say it's somebody with a mental health problem. Well, maybe red flag laws would be helpful in those circumstances.
And then the very high IQ person, Jasmine Crockett, she once again, she actually accidentally admits exactly what I've said about every gun control argument here, which is Democrats have no clue if their gun control laws would have actually worked to stop the shooting itself, because you don't know that. But very compelling argument there, Jasmine. So anyways, there you have it. That is basically her response. Again, I don't know if everyone notices, but I can exactly see right through it. Here's another response from Senator Dick Durbin, obviously a Democrat out of Illinois, who says he's trying to do a unity statement here. He says, Republicans are not Nazis and Democrats are not evil. Democrats are not responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk. Right? Republicans are not responsible for the murder of Melissa Hortman. Opponents are not enemies, we're Americans. And again, what is the point I'm making? Democrats are not responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk. Again, okay, yes, not directly. Yes, you are correct. They're not directly responsible in the sense that, well, like a Democrat politician went out and did it. However, as I put here, when Democrats coddle and sponsor a giant network of these like violent and very deranged radical activists, and they use them as this like organized and funded paramilitary force, then in the end, like what happens, and here's the other thing to keep in mind, right? As you saw from Jasmine Crockett, as you see from Dick Durbin, Gavin Newsom, all of these characters who do say they condemn violence, when asked to say, okay, do you condemn the source of the violence? Do you condemn Antifa? Do you condemn these revolutionary movements? Not only will they not say that, they furthermore will refuse to acknowledge that these things even exist. For instance, anyone remember? Because this stuff actually goes back several years. Remember in the 2020 presidential debates when they explicitly asked Joe Biden, do you condemn Antifa? And his response was to say that Antifa doesn't exist, right? He said, Antifa is just an idea. This is exactly what I'm describing.
I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia. That's what his FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, this was in the year 2020. Where the Democrat Party was explicitly using Antifa as a paramilitary force, whether that's to go and protest on behalf of BLM or riot and burn things on behalf of BLM. Same exact thing. The goal was very simple: intimidate people, create destruction, create instability, and ultimately try to help Joe Biden, right, in the election through fear and mass mobilization and all of those different types of things. But at the very same time, whenever the far left acts out of line, in terms of maybe what might be acceptable to the sensitivities of normal Americans, they don't condemn it. They just say, oh, that's not real. Antifa is just an idea. It's not an organization or anything else. So apparently an idea just shot Charlie Kirk the other day is further what even in 2025, Joe Biden's answer apparently here would be. And of course, that never goes in the reverse, right? They're trying to make this a both sides issue, but no. Think back to Charlottesville, for instance. Whenever a white supremacist does something bad, every Republican politician is immediately asked, do you condemn white supremacies? Do you condemn neo-Nazis? Republicans say yes, okay? But notice whenever you ask a Democrat about a left-wing extremist, they say, well, I condemn violence, yes, but left-wing extremism doesn't actually exist. As you just saw, when clearly it does, right? And the most they will ever offer in regards to left-wing terrorism is simply saying we condemn violence. They will never mention what is actually driving the violence. What is the motivation? What is the inspiration for it? You listen to CNN and MSNBC today, they're still even going further to say that, oh, we don't yet know the motive for the Charlie Kirk shooter, even though the motive is already clearly stated in the criminal indictment, right? This is what they keep on doing. So that's why I said to Senator Dick Durbin, right? This is not a both sides issue. Your party is sponsoring an extremist movement that often translates to domestic terrorism, which it does. It does. And last thing I want to note on this front is that now that the Trump administration is announcing they're going to do this, and hopefully they do end up doing it, right? Hopefully Pam Bondi understands it's not about hate speech or Office Depot. It's about shutting down far left, organized left-wing radicalism, okay? But nonetheless, you of course have heard the argument from some Democrats and even a lot of Republicans saying that, well, what about the slippery slope, right? You know, if Republicans wield governmental power like this to shut down left-wing terrorism, then maybe it will be used against the right. There's already a problem with that. They've already done this. It happened under the Obama administration, by the way, massive use of the IRS to target and harass conservative organizations. That's a proven fact. But I'm not sure it's a big surprise. But today, Senator Chuck Grassley, in a Senate hearing with Kash Patel, announced a whistleblower has exposed the program that happened under Joe Biden called Operation Arctic Frost, which targeted over 92 Republican groups, Charlie Kirk's TPUSA among them. These reports were now made public today. And essentially, all we're really now calling the Trump administration to do is, hey, use the Joe Biden playbook to go after the people actually committing and perpetrating the violence in our country right now. So take a listen. And again, keep this in mind before you fall victim to the so-called both sides or slippery slope arguments, because they've already done this. All we're saying now is, well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Well, it's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics. I'm going to provide examples of that today, including making public new whistleblower records. At your nomination hearing, I made public records that whistleblowers provide me about Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by antitrust Trump FBI agent Thibault. Arctic Frost then became Jack Smith's elector case against then Citizen Trump and now President Trump. These new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. The case was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the group that Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorney General's Association, and various Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. So today, Senator Johnson and I are making these records public for the entire country to see.
Yeah, so you hear that, contrarian right-wingers? All of you slippery slope people, oh, we shouldn't violate the precedents or norms of American democracy. We should stand by our principles. If Trump does something, we have to consider the consequences in a future Democrat administration. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, hold on, huh? Wait. Oh. You know, Arctic Frost was a bad thing, but Joe Biden did leave behind something very good, actually. He gave us a blueprint to investigate the far left and far left organizations, okay? We'll call it Operation Antarctic Frost. I don't know. What I do know is this, okay? Unlike the right-wing normal groups like Turning Point USA, there is genuine screwed up stuff happening in Democrat dark money and Democrat politics. Look at Act Blue, for instance, you know? We haven't talked about that in a long time, but the fact that it was basically revealed a bunch of the Democrat Party's artificially high fundraising is coming from likely credit card fraud, or again, those nonprofit groups that sponsor the migrant invasion of our country, or directly, I mean, all of the ANTIFA style groups that George Soros' Open Society Foundation is funding. I mean, guys, this stuff is not hard. These people have gone completely immune from, forget prosecution, immune from just public scrutiny and auditing for a very long time. And I'm going to take a wild guess. If you peel back the curtain, there's a lot to discover, frankly. And this is the moment in history to do it. You will never find a better time than right now to say as a country, we need to shut down the organized far left. So there you go. All right, with that said, though, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.